Well, welcome. This is a very happy occasion for us here today to tell everybody about a very unique very unique project, and one that took a long time in coming. So we thank you for joining us here today, and this project really marks a huge step forward for New Bedford's renewable energy initiative with the commissioning of the Sullivan's Ledge solar project. This is a project that we have been working on to reduce the city's electricity costs, save taxpayers millions of dollars over the next 20 years, while at the same time generating local jobs, producing clean energy, and repurposing contaminated sites like this one. And if you don't know a little bit about Sullivan's Ledge, this is a long time in coming. The Sullivan and Sullivan's Ledge is named after a mason named Sullivan, who mined this area for some 20 years in the late 19th century, and it had been this pastoral place, pristine place that was unspoiled by man until the 1930s, when many of our city's manufacturers, who were very successful at the time, decided to use it as a dumping site. And for those of us of a certain age, we can remember it as being a nasty place that we all stayed away from. But today, with today's announcement, we're announcing that we've turned what had long been, for decades, an environmental liability for our city into an environmental asset. New Bedford, in a very big way, is forging ahead and has emerged as a renewable energy leader. And I'm pleased today that as evidence of the fact of our leadership, that we are proud that Gina McCarthy, the Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, is here today, and you'll hear from Gina in a moment. So what exactly has New Bedford achieved with these efforts? New Bedford has now installed more solar power per capita than any U.S. city besides Honolulu. Now, Honolulu gets more days like this one than we do, so it's not a level playing field, so we've done quite well. And on the East Coast, only New York City has installed more power in absolute terms, and they're a little bit bigger than us. Just a few years ago, as I said, this site was regarded as a problem with no good solution. It was one of the most contaminated sites in the entire United States. It was put on the Superfund's list early in the Superfund program. It really stood out like a sore thumb, not just here in New Bedford, but nationally. But over the last 2 years, through our efforts to assert ourselves as a renewable energy leader, we've taken things to another level. What was once a modest local effort to put solar panels on buildings has now turned into one of the nation's most ambitious moves toward solar. New Bedford's leadership position has other communities asking nowadays, how do they do it, and how can we do it? As we speak, the Sullivan's Ledge project right back here is quietly generating power, cutting utility bills and saving taxpayer dollars. Our renewable energy program is also strengthening the city's economy and our environment in a big way. I could not be prouder of the creativity, commitment, and teamwork of all of those who have been involved in this project every step of the way, and there are so many folks to thank today. At 1.8 megawatts and with more than 5,000 solar panels spread across 10 acres, this project produces enough electricity to power more than 200 homes. And if the environmental benefits alone are not compelling enough to pursue this renewable energy initiative, this particular project is projected to save the city an estimated $2.7 million over the next 20 years. So that's real taxpayer savings. And it is just one of 10 solar projects in our renewable energy initiative that are projected to save taxpayers well over $20 million in the next 20 years. It is our city's long-term goal to purchase a full 2/3 of our energy from solar sources, and we are on track. By the end of this year, with today's project, we will be at 50%. Our success in solar complements our other work in shaping a greener future for our citizens. We just moved into a single-stream recycling program and now have a fleet of garbage trucks that run on compressed natural gas. Right now, Siemens Corporation is retrofitting 10,000 street lights with LED light bulbs that will save about $500,000 a year in electricity costs. We're replacing one by one our city vehicles with electric powered vehicles. And in the near future, we will use organic waste to power city trucks. And with Cape Wind's announcement that it will use the New Bedford Marine Commerce Terminal as the staging site for the Cape Wind project, by this time next year, New Bedford will have become the birthplace of the offshore wind industry in the United States. More than anything else, our initiatives are yet another demonstration of how New Bedford, Massachusetts, once seen as a city trailing the pack, is now leading the pack. New Bedford stands for excellence in every way. We believe we can be a leader, not just in commercial fishing, where we're #1 in the United States, and not just in manufacturing, where our factories are growing week by week, it seems, but also in renewable energy. This is a green city, and indeed, it is no stretch to say that New Bedford is one of the greenest cities in the United States. Of course, we could not have achieved all of this without the support of our state and federal and private partners. The list of whose work went into this particular project and all of our projects is quite long, but I wanted to mention a few folks up front. First of all, the city team, and that includes Ron LaBelle, Commissioner of the Department of Public Infrastructure, Chief of Staff Neil Mello, Assistant City Solicitor Shannon Shreve, our Energy Director Scott Durkee, and our CFO Ari Skye. The state team, and there are many folks at the state level who deserve our thanks, and you'll hear from some of them today. DEP Commissioner David Cash, whom you'll hear from, as well as Mark Sylvia and Dan Burgess from DOER, as well as Dwayne Brager. We have members of our state legislative delegation in attendance that have supported our efforts and the state's efforts to become a greener place. In particular, Tony Cabral, Bill Strauss, Chris Markey, whose district this is in, has been a huge supporter as well. Our federal delegation, Bill Keating, our congressman, who has been supportive all along the way. Kurt Spalding's EPA team, and you'll hear from Kurt in a moment, huge partners with the city in this project and so many others. The Sullivan's Ledge Group, Bill Leahy and Steve Wood in particular, who are worked through the problems that we've that a unique project like this inevitably would have. NSTAR's folks, Dennis Galvium and Mark Rooney. Sun Edison's, this is a Sun Edison project, and they've done a fantastic job. Steve Rader and Matt Dickey, as well as Beaumont Solar's CEO Phil Cavallo, who is here, and you'll hear from him in a second. I want to introduce a gentleman who has been a leader both in the private sector as well as in the public sector in environmental conservation, enforcement, and just making our world a greener and more livable place. And a great friend of the city of New Bedford, one who was with us every step of the way, and that is John DeVillers. John.
The mayor gave my speech. I just want to add a couple of thoughts to reinforce what he was saying. First of all, it's great to be in New Bedford. It's great to be in New Bedford with the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. No one has a more important job in the generational issue of our lifetime, climate change, than Gina McCarthy, and we're lucky to have her there. She earned her stripes, cut her teeth, and left a great legacy here in Massachusetts and in Connecticut, her leadership at the state level, and it's great to have her leading the U.S. efforts and to be here today. So Gina, thank you for being here. I want to also acknowledge Representative Strauss and Representative Markey and others from state government, David Cash and Dan Burgess and others who are here. We would not be having this press conference. We would not be looking at this wonderful facility if it wasn't for something called the Green Communities Act. And Governor Patrick's leadership and the leadership of his team at DEP and DOER and EEA has been central to not just this project, but to making Massachusetts one of the leading states in the country for solar energy. So thanks to the legislature for the wisdom and foresight to create the act, and to the Patrick administration for implementing it so well. We're celebrating more than just this site today. As the mayor mentioned, New Bedford is now not only a national, really an international leader in solar development. The financial benefits to the city, more than $20 million. The environmental benefits from this site alone, 30 million tons of carbon dioxide that will be taken out of the atmosphere. Those are significant achievements financially for the city and environmentally. But they're spread across 10 projects, 20 megawatts, twice what any other city in the Commonwealth has been able to do. And I actually think New Bedford's used more solar electricity than New York, but first or second in the eastern United States is a great achievement. So in addition to celebrating this project and celebrating the city's leadership, I want to add to the mayor's word of thanks to a whole host of people. There are many people here today who at times never thought we were going to see this day, and I especially want to cite their contribution. From EPA, Dave Lederer is here with a great team of people, Brian Olson, Nancy Grantham, Jim Owens, Nancy Barmikian, and others. They and Ruth Ann Sherman worked very, very hard, not only to ensure the health and safety of this community through the cleanup, but by making this project happen. The mayor mentioned Steve Wood and Bill Leahy, the PRP group. Without their cooperation, 10 or 12 different parties that they had to bring together to work with our team on engineering, finance, financial assurance mechanism, a whole range of things, any one of which could have sunk this project. And their contribution, patience, creativity is appreciated and celebrated today as well. Phil Cavallo and the Beaumont Solar Company and other contractors here helped Blue Wave deliver on its promise to New Bedford to make this about more than just electricity savings, but to make it a community and economic development tool. And Beaumont has grown so much. This project has helped them, and it's helped the New Bedford economy as well. So to Phil and his team, Arlene Aruda and others from Beaumont, very appreciative of what you've done. Last but by no means least, I want to cite the leadership of the city. Mayor Lang put in a great foundation for this project and for the work that the city has done. But it's taken Mayor Mitchell and his commitment, his vision, his patience, and his persistence to make this project happen, and so many of the other things that we're celebrating today. So to the mayor, Blue Wave's thanks as well. And perhaps most especially to the staff of the city that worked so hard on this. Jim Ritchie, who's found his way into retirement, perhaps 2 years later than he would have hoped, but he made super commitment to this effort. And one of the folks in the city who's literally devoted hundreds of hours to this effort, as has Ron LaBelle, Shannon Shreve, Scott Durkee, Matt Morrissey, Neil Mello. Every one of those folks has been central to this. I think it's truly a project that we can say, if those enterprises and the people that were in them, the city, EPA, and everyone else, each one of those institutions can say, if it wasn't for us, this project wouldn't have happened. So congratulations to you, and thank you for all your great work.
Thank you, John. It was indeed a great effort, and it's been a simple approach, and that is to find ways to turn our environmental liabilities into environmental assets. As I said earlier, these projects are not just about cutting local government's utility bills and saving taxpayer dollars, but a part of a larger environmental strategy to clean up and to make new use of contaminated sites. SunEdison has been a big believer in that approach, and I'm pleased that Matt Dickey, the Managing Director of Sales for SunEdison, is here with us today, and I would ask them to come up and say a few words. Matt.
Thank you. Thank you very kindly, and thank you all for coming, and all the long list of people who have been engaged in this project for helping it come to fruition. 11 years ago, 3 people sat across a kitchen table in a row house in Baltimore. And they agreed at that time and wrote down and built a company dedicated to making solar power a viable power option in our world today, with the far-sighted goal of changing lives through innovation. Well, that was 11 years ago, and that was SunEdison at the time. Today, we're a company of 5,000 people with more than 1,600 megawatts of power that we've been able to construct. And large thanks go out to the team that is in place in each one of those sites, just like the one here. I'm going to give a small shout out to Mayor Mitchell. He speaks very modestly about the performance of the city of New Bedford, but frankly, sir, the effort that you have made is not modest. And the solar power, as a solar power driven guy, many congratulations and thanks on behalf of all of the people at SunEdison for the efforts that you have made. Teaming with our friends at Blue Wave, City of New Bedford, of course, the regulatory arms of the state of Massachusetts, and our friends at the federal government, the stars all kind of aligned such that we could build a project here on an Superfund landfill cleanup site. And I got to tell you, as the people who were going and seeking financing for this, there were a lot of eyebrows raised when we would enter rooms and talk about this. But through the efforts of all of the people involved, all the T's were crossed, all the I's were dotted, and what you see behind us is the result of that effort. To close, I thank you all for coming, and I rethink the efforts of the people that Mr. DeVillers and Mayor Mitchell have mentioned, and I look forward to our very long and productive 20-year relationship. Thanks very much.
Matt, I appreciate the compliments, but you know, for an elected official, I think modesty is a liability. So I'll take that as a double-edged compliment. But thank you, and thank you for all your help. John DeVillers has something he wants to get off his chest, something he left out of his remarks. Go ahead, John.
I left out the people that are paying for the project, which is SunEdison, and I just and I realized that all by myself without Matt mentioning anything to me. But I apologize for that and just want to thank them as well. Obviously, this wouldn't be happening without their investment. Fred Zalkman from SunEdison is here, who's made a huge impact on the Massachusetts policy landscape as well. They're a serious player. We're proud to have them as partners for this project and a dozen other projects we're working with them on. I would just note, we went to 3 separate financing sources, all mature players in this industry, and every one of those financing sources said, too risky, we're not going to do it. We turned to SunEdison and they stepped up to the plate to do it. So a special thanks and a special apology for leaving them out.
No worries, thank you.
John, you should know better than to leave out such things. But it is true, and it bears emphasizing that SunEdison took this on as what appeared to be a fairly risky proposition, one that others in the industry decided not to go forward with. So Matt, I mean, it really took some guts to do it, and you know, this is something to crow about for sure. I want to call up next someone who has been a tremendous partner for the city, not just on this project, not just on the solar initiative, but in so many other ways, and that's Kurt Spalding, the EPA Region 1 Administrator. Yeah, I've often frequently mentioned to Kurt, somewhat jokingly, but not entirely, that there's enough work for EPA in New Bedford to justify a field office here. It's, you know, if you run down the list of not just minor complications, but major projects here, it is. The folks at EPA, the very able folks at EPA, know the restaurant scene in New Bedford as well as anybody. It runs from the South Terminal project, to South Coast Rail, to the Parker Street waste site, the harbor cleanup, of course, to Sullivan's Ledge, to solar initiatives like this, and brownfields all over the place. These aren't things we like to brag about, of course, but we're dealing with them. That's the point. We're dealing with them in a very holistic way, in a very collaborative way, in a way that people expect government agencies at all levels to interact with one another. And I can't thank Kurt enough for his support over the last couple of years. I have, a lot of you know I was an assistant U.S. attorney in Boston before I was mayor, and I worked very closely with the Environmental Protection Agency on a number of cases, oil spill cases and others, and I've always had a great respect for what the EPA does, and so happy to be working with Kurt. And Kurt's going to introduce Gina McCarthy, and we ran into one another, Gina, a few months ago, if you recall, in Dallas at the U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting, and we talked about this idea of doing an event at Sullivan's Ledge, and we really appreciate your willingness to come here to highlight this. But it's a this what we hope is going to help you in your leadership of the EPA to amplify the example here. This is again a way of reusing a contaminated site that can bring great community benefits. And we're so lucky to have Gina as an EPA administrator, someone who's from Massachusetts originally, but sees things from a global perspective, but never forgets where she came from. So let me introduce Kurt, who will introduce Gina. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. And indeed, we like to think we're a big partner with you here. We were doing some math. The amount of money that we've been able to put into what's going on here in New Bedford, we think exceeds $500 million, maybe a little less than $1 billion, but it's a lot of money and it's a lot of well-earned effort. And I want to thank my team that John called out. You guys have done a fantastic job. I also want to thank John. He was the regional administrator of EPA, 3 before me, I guess. I think that's right. But the bottom line is both these gentlemen were public servants, and I want to thank you both for your service. It's fantastic. So it is my pleasure, great pleasure, to introduce my boss, the Administrator of EPA, Gina McCarthy. Now, we all know Gina's a New Englander. You only have to listen a moment to her speech pattern. I love it when she says assets is what she says as she goes around the country, and everybody knows immediately where she's from. But more than that, she's born and bred here and connected in a very significant way. She's a graduate of UMass Boston. She was the health director in Canton, her home, and she really knows how environmental issues play out at the community level. Now, she has worked at the state level, as we all know here in Massachusetts. She was commissioner of DEP in Connecticut, where if you go over to Connecticut, they will still talk about how Gina changed the energy level on environmental protection in Connecticut. She then went on, at the request of the first administrator under the President Obama, to serve as the director of the Air Office of EPA, and has done amazing, important things. And now she's the administrator at the direct ask from the President of the United States. Now, we are incredibly proud to have her at our helm. And as you'll know, after she speaks, people tend to come up to me and after they hear her speak and go, well, wow, what is it like working for Gina McCarthy? And I go, well, it starts with energy, high energy. She's infused energy in everything we do. She makes it exciting. When you work with Gina, you know this is important, and you know it matters to everyone, especially the generations that follow. And finally, and I wouldn't leave this stage without saying this, it's challenging, because her expectations are very, very high, and her expectations are most high with how EPA works with our communities. And so, Mayor, I'm very proud to hear what you said today, and we're doing the same sort of thing in communities all across New England. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce Gina McCarthy, the Administrator of EPA, and I'm so glad she's here in New Bedford.
Oh, Lord, help us. This is fun. Hey, everybody. It's great to be here. Kurt, thank you for the introduction. As Kurt will tell you that when a regional administrator introduces you as their boss, I always chuckle a little bit. I think that's the only time is when I'm sitting in behind you that you actually introduce yourself like that in me. Because as John DeVillas will attest, there's no bosses to regional administrators. There's managers, sort of. But the good news about all that is that it's the way it ought to be, because they are so close to their own states in their communities that they become drivers of action. They facilitate all that's good in terms of cleaning up our environment and finding ways to turn environmental challenges into opportunities. That they connect with mayors like Mayor Mitchell. and those mayors that came before him. One of the reasons we met at the Conference of Mayors is because I know where the action is on environmental work. And it's at the local level. It's in every city who's struggling to make ends meet and to turn their brownfields in what they lovingly call landfills, which is really was a dump. And they turn that into an economic opportunity and a wonderful vision of how you can grow the economy in ways that are tremendously important for the public health of their community. So that vision and leadership is compelling. And I think it's great to have Kurt and the other regional administrators and those before them recognizing that EPA's job is to tap that energy, to really listen to you about what the priorities are that are going to grow jobs and grow the economy, and to find that wonderful sweet spot to use that energy in order to elevate the protections of public health and the environment in these communities. Today is a great example of something that is incredibly important, not just to me, but to my boss, who I say all the time, regardless of whether he's here, President Obama, and that is the challenge of climate change, which is really perhaps the greatest challenge, public health, environmental, economic challenge of our time, and to use that to change our difficulties, our spaces like this, our inability to be able to have a sustainable economic growth strategy for our communities and our states and our country, and turn that around. So you're taking the challenge of climate change and you're turning it into an economic opportunity. And you're doing it not just in a big scale, but in a small scale. Now, I'm not suggesting this isn't a great project. It is, but it's one of many that we have to think about creatively, is how do we turn these challenges into these types of opportunities? And I could be no prouder than to continue to live in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, because I do not believe, and please don't quote me, I don't think there's any state that's doing better at thinking creatively, envisioning for the future, and protecting their economy, and being more resilient when the economic downturn hits, and finding a way to be innovative and to lead in the clean energy revolution, which is beginning and which is evident today, than the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's leadership at the top, it's leadership in the agencies that you see before you, and it is an ability of the federal government to see how they play along and play well and play adamantly and fiercely, so that we take your ability and your leadership and we meld it with the leadership of the states and the federal government, and we make great things happen. Today may seem small to you, but as the challenge of climate change continues to challenge us nationally, it's these small projects that will convince people that the greatest danger we have on climate change is to do nothing. And we have a moral obligation to our kids to stand up and do the right thing. Today you're standing in front of the right thing. This is how you turn challenges into economic opportunities, and how you address the greatest public health of our time, the public health challenge of our time, one small site at a time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Administrator McCarthy. And it is an example of how climate change will be dealt with at every level of government. And it is a false premise to begin with if you say, well, the local government has no role in it. To the contrary, it has to be, climate change has to be dealt with at every level of government, and that's what you see here today. It's a collective effort, it's a collaborative effort, and one that we're all very proud of. And again, thank you so much for your support, your initiatives here in New Bedford and across America. As I said, it's every level of government, and we are lucky here in New Bedford to have such close partners at the state level. Governor Patrick has been a tremendous leader in the effort to combat climate change, but also to clean up brownfield sites. And One of our really strong partners has been David Cash, the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection. Dave Cash has done a fantastic job, not only enforcing the rules, but also applying a practical sense of how cities work and how cities are trying to move ahead, at least here in New Bedford. And he has been just a pleasure to work with during his time as, for me, during his time as commissioner. We have a governor's race here in Massachusetts right now, and I think both whoever the governor, whichever candidate is ultimately elected, that person will be well served to beat a path to David Cash's door and implore him to stick around. Dave, you offer a few words.
Thank you very much. I'm asking for a letter of reference from Mayor Mitchell. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mayor. It is fantastic to be here today. I bring greetings from Governor Patrick and Secretary Bartlett. I think for those of you who know what goes on in this administration, they have had tireless work to bring together environmental protection, economic development, green job growth, energy savings. That's what this is all about. That's what you've been hearing. Obviously, I want to thank Mayor Mitchell, a huge partner and a huge leader. I know that 200 years ago, New Bedford led the world in lighting. Whale oil from New Bedford led the world. And the economy of New Bedford was driven by that. Mayor Mitchell has shown that New Bedford can light the world once again, lighting all of the municipal efforts from this. Being such a leader, as you've heard, in the clean energy economy to move New Bedford into the place that it had been 200 years ago, but in a very different, innovative, creative kind of time. Obviously, as you've heard, the legislature has been critically important. We have worked hand in hand with the legislature. Rep. Strauss, Rep. Markey, Rep. Cabral have been excellent partners as we've moved forward. And of course, the EPA has been phenomenal. Gina has been an amazing leader, and a very quick story. When I first came into state government, actually Gina left several months later to go to Connecticut, and there was a big raucous farewell party for her. And what was totally interesting about this party is that there were the standard characters who loved her there, the NGOs, state agency people who had worked with her, municipal officials. But the room was easily half filled with developers, folks from industry, because they knew that the way Gina works in government, her notion of governance is about no nonsense, fair play, implementation of good ideas, and that's what she's done at the EPA, and it's been a pleasure working with you and Kurt and your team as we've tackled many different challenges and opportunities. And as Gina mentioned, there are those kinds of opportunities related to addressing climate change. I was at a speech she gave this morning, and she said, as we design our strategies to protect health and the environment, it must be a path forward to grow jobs and grow the economy. We need to make this path forward to a clean energy future. Then she went on to say, in the more Gina style that we know, if you don't think that environmental protection goes hand in hand with economic development, we can take it outside. She can marry those two kinds of speaking in a very powerful way. When Governor Patrick came into office, he brought under the same umbrella all the energy and environment agencies. It's not a surprise that Dan Burgess from DOER is sitting here. The energy agencies and the environment agencies have worked hand in hand, coming up with innovative responses to the kinds of problems that we have behind us, turning a bad into a good, meeting the challenges of environmental protection with innovative economic development solutions. And every time you pass a solar project in Massachusetts, every time you see a windmill in Massachusetts, every time you see buildings that have been retrofit for energy efficiency, those are dollars that are staying here in Massachusetts. Those are Sun Edison employees bringing a paycheck home in Massachusetts. Those are school systems and police departments that can now hire new people because of landfills that are covered like this. What mayor would not want to get over $100,000 a year from a project like this so that they can pay it on the essential services that cities and towns provide? It's a no-brainer. And people in Massachusetts, people throughout the country, the new climate rules that the EPA is doing is showing the country that it's a no-brainer to clean up the economy and grow the clean up the environment and grow the clean energy economy. Right now, DEP, working with EPA and cities and towns, have permitted 55 landfills to be covered by solar. There are 24 up and running already, 13 under construction. Again, every one of these is jobs on the ground, savings in cities and towns' pockets. It's been stated here many, many times, and we can't overstate it, that partnerships are critical. From the municipal to the state to the federal level to the private sector to financing, that is how we are going to protect the environment. That is how we're going to grow clean energy jobs. That's how we're going to see the kinds of savings that we need to see. So I am so delighted to be here as we continue this incredible launch into the clean energy future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. So this project and the other projects as part of that are part of our initiative would not be possible if it weren't for the state incentives in place to make them happen. For developers to partner with us and to have room to make a profit, as they are set up to do, and for municipalities to reap the benefits. So in that way, Governor Patrick deserves tremendous credit for his for the Green Jobs Act from a few years ago, as well as our legislators, in particular Bill Strauss and Chris Markey, who are here today, as well as the rest of our local delegation. This is, again, an example of how Massachusetts has taken the lead. The Green Jobs Act and the projects like this around the state are stewarded by the Department of Energy Resources, very skillfully under Mark Sylvia's leadership up until recently, and today we have Dan Burgess, the Deputy Commissioner, who will offer a few words about DOER's successes in this area and how they've been able to partner with us on a project like this. Dan.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, everyone. It is really truly a privilege to be here with so many distinguished guests, and it's frankly a hard act to follow with so many great folks up here. So at the risk of repeating what's already been said, I really want to congratulate everyone involved in the project and want to acknowledge the incredible partnership at every level that has made this possible. You've heard people say today that when Governor Patrick took office nearly 8 years ago, working with folks here and across the state, he made clean energy a central component of his plan for Massachusetts. Today, with projects like Sullivan's Ledge, projects that really do make economic and environmental sense, we're seeing the results of those plans. Communities across the Commonwealth are taking their energy needs into their own hands and investing in renewable energy. And to put it into context, this project is a part of that incredible solar growth we've seen across the Commonwealth. In just around 8 years, we've seen the capacity of solar grow from just 3 megawatts when the governor came into office to now nearly 650. Just this past month, we actually announced that we have over 15,000 solar installations in the Commonwealth. That's 15,000 installations from schools to businesses in every corner of the Commonwealth. So we're making great progress. With that, a strong industry has taken place. It has grown up around that, including right here in New Bedford, as the mayor mentioned. We've had double-digit growth over the past 2 years, and there are over 5,500 clean energy companies in the Commonwealth. So the bottom line is that these investments and results don't happen by accident. They take the right people, policy, and years of hard work. And on behalf of the Patrick administration, the governor, Secretary Bartlett, former Commissioner Sylvia, I want to congratulate everyone involved in this project and look forward to the continued collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Before I introduce our last speaker, I just wanted to also credit the City of New Bedford's environmental steward, Michelle Paul, who's here today, again, someone who's very familiar to folks at DEP as well as EPA, and who played an important role in this effort. This effort is not just about climate change, although that is important, and it's not just about saving taxpayer dollars, although that is very important. So it's also about local jobs and economic growth. Phil Cavallo is the CEO of Beaumont Solar, a solar installation company headquartered right in the middle of New Bedford that employs New Bedford folks who worked on this project. He put paychecks in the pocket of local kids who came out here and did a fantastic job, and he's been doing it on our other projects as well. We're very proud that here in New Bedford, not only are we creating the projects, but we're actually creating the conditions for the projects, but also building them. So Phil, we're so proud the work that you and your crews are doing, and we'd ask you to come up and say a few words.
Mayor Mitchell, thank you for your introduction and all you do here in New Bedford to make it a cleaner, greener, and more prosperous city. We appreciate that. I'm thrilled to be here today. On behalf of all of our employees at Beaumont Solar, we thank you for your leadership in driving the city of New Bedford to be one of the leaders in the state and one of the leaders in the country, and perhaps, as John DeVillers put it, in the world in terms of solar adoption and green energy. Simply put, without the participation of the city with Beaumont Solar in partnership, we wouldn't be realizing the economic benefits of the clean energy that's being produced, or the economic benefits of the jobs that have been created here as a result of this relationship. Some history on the company. My wife and I bought a sign company from Rick Beaumont, who's here in the audience, about 8 years ago. And 8 years ago, this company had a tremendous reputation in the sign industry. We didn't see it as a company that was going to stay in the sign industry, but we didn't exactly know where it was going to go. As a result of the Green Communities Act, and as a result of some proliferation of wind and solar, we decided to launch into the solar business by sticking our big toe in the water, so to speak, and doing some residential projects. I can say today that the company has proliferated, we've done extremely well, and we've created a number of jobs. We thought about company engineers and installers whose skills of designing and installing big things like billboards and things of that nature in the sign industry would move us into rooftops and other technology that we could use to our advantage. After briefly looking into land-based wind, and with the advent of this Green Communities Act, we quickly moved into solar. With a low-interest loan from the New Bedford Economic Development Council, we never looked back. As of today, just 8 years later, the company has grown tenfold in terms of revenue and in terms of number of employees, which is a fantastic testament to the Green Communities Act and this economy that was created as a result of it. So the beauty of adopting renewable energy is that it creates a triple bottom line. First is that it's undeniable that it's great for the environment. Second, it has tremendous economic benefits to municipalities, to cities, to states, and to local residents who can reduce the cost of energy that they're consuming over the period of years. And third, it creates jobs, which are critical for our economy, especially critical here in New Bedford, which had a high unemployment rate 8 years ago when I took over the company. Today, the company employs New Bedford Voc Tech graduates, both apprentices and licensed electricians. The apprentices we had working here on this job also go to school at the New Bedford Vocational Technical School for their school hours so that they can get their licenses after 3 years. So if you take a high school graduate at 18, by the time he's 21, he's got an electrical license to practice as a journeyman electrician, building solar or doing other things. And we sponsor these kids to go through this program so that they can turn out and actually create some income for themselves over the long term. We believe in keeping things local here at Beaumont. We source as much as possible as we can from local suppliers. And when people come in and apply for a job, I tell candidates that if they're from New Bedford, they get special treatment. I'm deeply grateful that New Bedford has a leader in Mayor John Mitchell, and likewise, he believes passionately in this renewable energy triple bottom line. New Bedford has already deployed solar, as you've heard, on schools, on land, and on brownfields, most of which Beaumont Solar has built. So it's been a tremendous partnership with the city. And today, Beaumont is working with Mayor Mitchell, as well as our outstanding partners, Blue Wave Capital, who, by the way, John was kind of modest in his speech, but it was John's vision and his persistence that got this job to where it is today, which is tremendous contribution. And our partners with Sun Edison, which we don't know all that well. This is our first project with them, but it's tremendous, and we look forward to doing future projects with them. as a result of all of this, and it was said already, that New Bedford as a city becomes the top tier city in the country and perhaps in the world. So Mayor, in sum, Beaumont Solar is living proof that green adoption in the city is living up to its promise, state and city government working with private industry to create real jobs on the way to improving our environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, everybody. This is something we can all be proud of. This is a collaboration that of the likes of which the people expect from government employees. Together, we have turned lemons into lemonade, and we should all be very proud of that. We'll take questions down from the stage, but I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for being out here today. Thanks.
Families come in all sizes and shapes. Sometimes your friends are your family by choice, or sometimes you're just stuck with Uncle Charles. Sometimes you've got an office family. Yes. And sometimes Team Family has got your back. But what we know is that you want to protect the people that are close to you. The flu can unravel everything. Your flu vaccine protects you and your family. No matter what draws your family together, protect yourself. Protect your family. Everyone needs a flu vaccine.
We're the stronger than we look type. The braver than you think type. The type that's sure the time will come when we put type 1 behind us. We're the progress is inevitable type. The rise to every challenge type. The type that knows bit by bit the future is certain to get better. We're the plan for a cure type. The improve life along the way type. The type that will stop at nothing. Absolutely nothing. Until type 1 becomes type none.